Hello and welcome to TV on TV. I'm State Representative Tommy Vitolo. You're watching Brookline Interactive Group. Today is Thursday, January 20th, and we have a great show for you. Our guest today is State Senator and candidate for Lieutenant Governor Eric Lesser. And we got a great interview coming up, recorded just a few days ago. But first, as always, the news. And we'll start with United States news. Secretary of State Antony Blinken will convene with Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov of Russia in another attempt to deter a Russian assault on Ukraine. The U.S. House committee that investigated the January 6th attack on the Capitol has subpoenaed Rudolph Giuliani. And the Biden administration program that delivers 4 at-home COVID-19 tests per household launched yesterday. You can order yours at http://special.usps.com/test kits. That's one word, test kits, TESTKITS. On Tuesday, Democrats furthered their efforts to enact voting rights protections despite continued Republican opposition. Biden delivered a speech in Atlanta, Georgia, where he spoke of the importance of ending the filibuster to advance voting rights. Here in Massachusetts, Governor Charlie Baker has announced that he is removing the requirement for schools to practice contact tracing. Instead, the administration is offering weekly rapid tests to faculty and students. The Massachusetts House votes today on a bill that would expand testing sites, purchase N95 and KN95 masks for students and school staff, and strengthen $5 million toward boosting vaccinations among kids aged 5 to 11. Also on the docket today is legislation that would protect nearly 1 million student loan borrowers across the state from being further harmed if they fall behind on their student loans. I am hoping that we will also take up the ability to continue representative town meeting virtually for a while. COVID continues to be a problem, and the idea of going back to all in person at this moment doesn't seem quite right. Perhaps that will change as numbers go down in the future. Today, I testified in support of S2473, a home rule petition that would allow the town of Brookline to ban fossil fuels in new construction and major renovations. And earlier this week, Brookline's Martin Luther King Jr. celebration featured Professor Robert Tsai. This week, a pedestrian was hit in Brookline, resulting in the temporary closure of Route 9 outbound. We've seen quite a few pedestrians struck by vehicles lately, and it's something I hope the town is able to work on. Of course, we would hope that pedestrians are being careful, but frankly, let's be clear, the person operating the $3,000, $4,000, $5,000, or $6,000 vehicle is the one whose obligation is to not run into people, particularly in urban areas where it is reasonable to expect people to be. And so please, whether you are walking, bicycling, or driving, please be careful out there. If you are able to further policy, either through expenditures or through changes in law, maybe think about that too. Finally, Town Administrator Mel Kleckner announced Richard Allen's new position as interim police chief for the Brookline Police Department. And so congratulations to him and several other police officers in Brookline who received promotions. That's all the news that's fit to print. I'm really excited to cut over to an interview with State Senator and candidate for Lieutenant Governor Eric Lesser. Stay tuned on Brookline Interactive Group. And as always, we'll see you on the flip side. And as promised, today we have an unbelievable guest. We have my friend and yours, Senator Eric Lesser. Senator, thanks for coming on the show.
Hey, thanks, Tommy or Rep. Vitolo. I will say I do have a pretty strict rule of first names only on Zoom, so call me Eric.
That's fair. That's fair. Yeah, you can still call me Rep. Vitolo. No, I'm kidding. No, as our viewers on Brookline Interactive Group know, we do an interview a week, and I think this is a really important one. And for folks who haven't been following the day-to-day, Eric, you just very recently announced your candidacy for lieutenant governor.
I did. Yeah, no, it's a eventful 2 weeks. We announced 2 weeks ago on January 4th. So we've been full steam ahead ever since then.
So we're going to get there, but I start with almost every guest exactly the same. Tell us what you've been doing from birth until now in about like 3 minutes, maybe 4.
Well, thanks for having me, Tommy, and hello to everybody in Brookline. It's really great to be here with State Rep Tommy Vitolo, who's a friend and partner to me on so many issues that we work on: transportation, environment, climate change, job training issues, housing, you name it. So it's fun to be on this, and I'm excited for the conversation. For me, like, it actually all started when I was a high school student. I was 16 years old in Longmeadow, which is a town 90 miles west of Brookline on the Mass Pike in Western Massachusetts. And the high school principal of my public school called us all in for an assembly and lined up a whole bunch of teachers at the front of the room and said that they weren't coming back next year because of budget cuts. Frankly, it was because of budget cuts in the building that you and I both work in at the State House. And I remember being 15 years old and feeling pretty angry that a bunch of teenagers were being asked to pay the price for bad decisions that had been made somewhere else. So we organized a Prop 2.5 override campaign. And I remember sitting in the town hall when the votes were getting cast, and the vote passing after weeks of frenzied door knocking and leafleting and stopping people in front of the supermarket and all the things you do in an election like that. And I remember the teacher literally ripping up the pink slip and throwing it in the garbage because the vote passing meant that their job was saved. And I felt pretty lucky that at an early age, I saw with my own eyes that despite the kind of messiness and the frustrations of politics, it remains one of the most important ways to make a difference. And that was really how I got my start.
And then you went straight from there to a state Senate seat, right?
Not quite. I did a couple of things along the way, but so I kind of caught the bug after that, and kind of got roped in when I was in college with this skinny guy with a funny name from Illinois, Barack Obama. And my job, my big break for him was carrying all of his suitcases around, first in New Hampshire, which of course is our neighbor to the north, where the first in the nation primary happens, and then all over the country. I traveled with him to 47 states and 6 countries. We traveled over 200,000 miles during the 2007 and 2008 campaign, and was with him and was watching at some pretty key moments along that campaign, including all the primaries, 3 general election debates, the speech he gave on race in Philadelphia, and then also ended up together on the first night of Passover in 2008, where we organized an impromptu Seder on the campaign trail. It was a fun story. We were in the middle of the Pennsylvania primary, which, if people remember who are kind of students of politics, was a very rough primary for Barack Obama. This was right after the Jeremiah Wright tapes had come out. It was really a pretty low point on the campaign. And Pennsylvania ended up going big for Hillary Clinton in the 2008 primary. But we were in Harrisburg the first night of Passover. And I put together, with the assist of my cousin, who was a student at the University of Pennsylvania at the time, and snatched a bunch of supplies from the UPenn Hillel. We were able to put together this kind of impromptu Seder for some of the traveling staff. And then Senator Obama joined it. And I remember we were all sitting around the Seder, and there were 2 things I really remember about that. First was that we had gotten to a pretty lengthy point in the Haggadah, which is the book that you read to tell the story of Passover. And Barack Obama turns to me and he says, "Hey, Lester," he says, "what do you and your family do at this point? What's the tradition that you guys do for this portion?" And I turned to him and I said, "Honestly, Senator, by this point we're eating." And then there was another memory that was that I also keep with me, which was, there's a point in the Seder where everybody lifts their glasses and they say, "Next year in Jerusalem." We all lifted our glasses, of course. At that point, we said, "Next year in Jerusalem." We put our glasses down, and then he raised his glass and he said, "Next year in the White House." And we all said, "Amen, l'chaim." And so fast forward a year later, he of course wins, and I'm working as the assistant to David Axelrod, who was the president's senior advisor. I had a desk about 40 feet from the front door of the Oval Office, and President Obama pokes his head in and he says, "Hey, Lesser, are we doing the Seder?" And I sat there and I said, sure. And he then kind of sheepishly looked at me and he said, "Well," he said, "I said next year in the White House, and we're here in the White House, so we're going to do it." And so he put it together. Him and Mrs. Obama hosted it with Malia and Sasha for all 8 years, actually, of his presidency. And it ended up being the first Seder celebrated by a president in the White House in American history. And he was very insistent that it was the original group of campaign staffers that had been all together during that Pennsylvania night to do the Seder from there on out. And we did it all 8 years. He was in the White House.
That's phenomenal. I love it. So you were in Washington working for the president, and then you found your way back home and said, the bug still bit, and I'm going to do something a little closer to home. And that's how you ended up in the Senate. Is that fair?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I mean, when I was working down in Washington, and there's a lot about it that is infectious and and very exciting. I mean, saw the Red Sox come when they, after they won the World Series, met LeBron James, all kinds of cool perks to working in a building like that. But also on a serious level, was there and watched, with my own eyes, all the steps to getting the Affordable Care Act passed, was there and worked with her team, Elizabeth Warren, on getting the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau set up and seeing Wall Street reform get passed. But, frankly, the reason I had kind of gotten involved with Obama in the first place was because of his history as a community organizer. And obviously, we're very different, and his experience organizing people on the south side of Chicago, very different from mine in Longmeadow, Massachusetts. But I was drawn to his theory of politics, which I know you share, Tommy, which is community-oriented, citizen-led, activist politics. And one of the things he had always taught us, and I know you and I agree on this, I don't want to assume, but my strong supposition is that you agree, is that change doesn't come from places like the State House where we both work, or from Capitol Hill, or from a city hall. Change almost always comes to those places, and it comes through organizing and activism in your own community. So I was really itching to get home to Western Mass, where I had grown up. And so I went back. I was 28. There was a open election for state Senate. I had every reason in the world not to run. I was 28. I had a baby. I had a baby daughter. I hadn't yet finished law school. I hadn't yet taken the bar, but jumped into a 5-way Democratic primary, won by 192 votes. And since then, I've been working on a lot of stuff that, you and I really care about and is really important to our state, including creating good jobs for people, getting our infrastructure fixed, making sure we're doing more on housing. I think you and I probably agree that this is a great state. I mean, we're lucky to live in Massachusetts. I frankly wouldn't want to live anywhere else or raise my family anywhere else. We got a lot going for us here. We got a lot of assets that other states would be pretty envious of. But it's getting harder and harder for people to live here and to afford to stay here. And so everything we can do around transportation, around housing, around cost of living is really where I've tried to center my work in the Senate, and would be where I would center my work as a partner to our next governor, as the lieutenant governor.
So I 100% agree with you on what a great place to live. I actually didn't grow up in Massachusetts. I grew up about 75 miles southwest of East Longmeadow in a town called Brookfield, Connecticut.
Yeah.
Much closer to New York.
We won't hold that against you.
Well, yeah, my father's from the Bronx. My mother's from Westchester County. I had a very New York-centric upbringing, Italian and Irish neighborhood, that sort of thing. So it does okay in these parts. My Portuguese part of the family also, we would go out to Acushnet every summer to spend a week with my mother's father's side of the family, the Portuguese side. But I'm thinking, so you get elected. That's a heck of a long MBTA D-line commute from East Longmeadow to the State House, right? I mean, that's That's probably at least an hour.
Yeah. Yeah, probably at warp speed, it's an hour. Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, well, Tommy, because one of the first times we met was when you were bringing your family to the Big E and we got breakfast. So you know better than you're a Big E aficionado, so you know better than most how far it is. But no, I mean, there is no rail link. Well, actually, there is a rail link between Springfield and Boston, but right now it's an Amtrak Lakeshore Limited line that brings you all the way to Chicago. It travels once a day. It takes about 3 hours and does not return. There's no return because it's going all the way to Chicago. So you can take the train to Springfield, but you can't get back. Or vice versa. And so one of the things we've been working on, and you've been a big supporter of this and a booster of it, which I've appreciated and has really been key to our success, is the idea of connecting our whole state by rail. And the idea is creating a high-speed rail line from Pittsfield to Springfield to Worcester to Boston and connecting the communities along that route as well. It would take tens of thousands of cars off the road. It would probably do more than anything to reduce greenhouse gas emissions in our state. 40% of our emissions in Massachusetts come from transportation, the vast majority of that from cars. It would create thousands of jobs building the rail, let alone the hundreds and hundreds of new businesses it would create all along the link. And it would help solve two complementary challenges in our state. You know, the challenge in Brookline, I think you'd probably agree, Tommy, there's a lot of challenges, obviously, but I think one of the biggest challenges you've got in the Metro Boston area is out of control cost. I mean, I don't know how anybody affords to live there. No, I mean, I guess if you already own your house, you're in good luck. But if you're trying to buy a house, if you're a young family, if you're a renter, the rents are going up and up and up. There's just no way to keep up. And it's impossible to get around. The T is outdated. The traffic's awful. We don't have enough bike infrastructure. I know you're a big biker. So it's just, that's going to choke the region. Eventually people are going to leave the Metro Boston area. They're going to go to other places that are investing in the housing and in the transportation. Western Mass actually has the inverse challenge. In Western Mass, we've got a great quality of life. We've got comparatively a lot of open space. Comparatively, it's a much better cost of living, but we don't have that same red hot economy. We don't have that same red hot tech and life sciences and higher ed sector to sort of fuel the job growth and create that magnetic attraction. So rail solves both issues, right? It gives the people of Brookline another place to live while they're connected to their jobs in Boston. It gives people in Western Mass, access to that red hot economy, and it helps solve our climate issues in the process. So it's something I've been passionate about for a long time. We're very close, actually. In 2014, when I first campaigned on this issue, it was dismissed. I was laughed at for it being some sort of pie in the sky idea. It's quite literally now on Joe Biden's desk. It was intercity rail service of this type was included in the Biden infrastructure bill, and we had a lot of help from Ed Markey, Elizabeth Warren, Jim McGovern, Richard Neal. A really A-list, heavy hitting congressional delegation that helped make it happen. And now the state needs to do its part by going out there and applying and getting the money. And if, as lieutenant governor, I would really focus on that. That was something Tim Murray focused on when he was lieutenant governor for Deval Patrick, getting that Worcester-Boston link set up. So now we got to expand it Worcester West. And just for anyone who might doubt the effectiveness of this strategy, take a look at Worcester. Worcester was viewed as a lost city, and in the last 10 years has seen a phenomenal increase in new jobs, new investment, new opportunities for families there, to the point where Worcester's population went up 14% in 10 years from one census to another. Worcester now has more people living there than at any time since the 1950s. And it's in part because of the investments of rail service and the connectivity of the rail line. Now we got to do that for Springfield and Pittsfield and all the communities along the way.
And I want to pile on quickly. There are two other important things about West-East rail as it were.
Yeah, our friend Smitty would has coins west east, which I'm all for. It's a smart strategy. It
And
reminds our friends in Boston that they don't necessarily always come first.
well, the train, as you said, the train will go in both directions. Two other things that are really important about it that I think are worth mentioning. Number one, there's a huge boost to tourism, primarily in state, but also, frankly, from Albany and other parts of New York. East to west, Massachusetts has an incredible amount to offer. And not everybody is going to drive there. And that's the other part of it is, who can ride the train? A 14-year-old kid. Who else can ride the train? A senior citizen who's uncomfortable driving at her age. People who have other challenges in mobility or cognitive ability or physical ability, right? Folks can ride the train who can't otherwise drive a car.
Right.
And if we talk about a society that's inclusive, I think we need to talk about a society that where more and more of us can get from here to there safely and affordably. And that means figuring out how to have a society that works alongside automobiles. We're not going to replace the automobile, but we shouldn't require, at least in my view, we shouldn't require automobile ownership and ability to pilot an automobile to get from here to there. And I say that as someone who used to ride buses from Kent, Connecticut, all the way to Roanoke, Virginia by myself at the age of 14 or 15 years old. The fastest I was ever able to do it, again, by myself, without a cell phone, without a credit card, was 28 hours, right? And
you should did you journal that, Tommy? That would be a good, it sounds like a Jack Kerouac novel.
Yeah, I was more a math guy than a writer, so not so much. But you're not just about rail. I know economic development is a really important issue that you've been thinking about and talking about, and certainly as an LG, it would be something you bring to the forefront. So tell us a little more about your thinking along the lines of economic development.
Yeah, well, thanks for asking, Tommy. I've had the privilege for the last 3 terms to chair our economic development committee, which is it's a very cool committee because it's really one of the kind of umbrella committees that helps manage the process of passing an economic development bill every session. And you've been a part of these for multiple efforts as well. And I currently co-chair it with Jerry Paracella, your colleague, Jerry Paracella from Beverly, and before that, co-chaired it the previous session with Ed Margaret Ferranti from Gloucester. And before that session, co-chaired it with Joe Wagner, my colleague from Chicopee in Western Mass. So it's been a broad cross-section of regions of the state. But the basic idea here is it's a workforce development, municipal infrastructure, and jobs bill. And we've worked to do that. So we, for example, have done several things that I think have been very important for our tech sector, including trying to get rid of non-competes, which is something that I've been pretty passionate about. I know you and I have talked about this in the past, Tommy, but the idea here is if you look at, 40 years ago, California and Massachusetts were actually kind of neck and neck. Massachusetts was even maybe ahead in terms of software development and who was going to really kind of own the tech economy. And California then kind of pulled away. If you think about some of the iconic internet companies, right, are almost exclusively based in California. That's changing now a little bit, but for the last recent history, it has been. Big part of the reason for that was California didn't have non-competes. So you could attract the most talented coders and developers to, fast growing startups, and you could allow kind of new ideas and new companies to kind of break in and grow quickly. We need that same dynamism here. Our life sciences sector, one of the single best engines of job creation in our state, one of the most important sectors of our economy. 28 of the top 30 pharma companies globally have a brick and mortar presence in Massachusetts. All 3 of the major COVID vaccines in part have both been developed from a research point of view and are literally in part being made in Massachusetts. But we know, for example, that life sciences sector is too concentrated in too few places. It's hyper concentrated in a handful of zip codes. It's also not diverse at all. It's almost entirely white and male. And it's also not diverse by geography. So we've done work, for example, to pull the life sciences center further west, further south, The bill we did, the 5-year extension of Deval Patrick's Life Sciences Initiative, has created thousands of paid internships at urban high schools in our gateway cities, and also at our community colleges to help diversify the talent pipeline and the workforce. We set up a new research center at Woods Hole on the Cape, with money from that bill, as well as at Bay State Medical Center in Springfield and at their campus in Greenfield, so that cutting edge medical research, the type that normally would only be done at a place like Dana-Farber, for example, you can now get done in Springfield or in Greenfield, which is a small town in northwest Massachusetts. So we've really done a lot over the last several years to kind of take all these really, we're just very lucky here because we have these incredible engines of growth. But the story in Massachusetts time and again is that we've got to get those engines of growth working for a broader cross section of people. And that's really been what our focus has been. Another big passion has been voc ed. My grandfather was a tool and die maker. I know we've talked about the trades. You can't have any serious conversation, I think, about wealth inequality without talking about the trades and specifically around manufacturing. That had been the engine for Italian immigrants, Portuguese immigrants, Jewish immigrants from Eastern Europe who came to the US. They went into those factories, they learned trades. It wasn't always a picnic. There was a lot about it that wasn't great, but they paid good wages. They allowed people to live, a middle-class life. And we know the story there is that, government kind of took its attention away from that kind of voc ed training. So we have incredible vocational schools all over our state. They almost all have wait lists. We need to close the wait lists at all of those schools. And we need to focus in on medical device manufacturing, life sciences manufacturing, and also high-tech manufacturing, precision machining, building the components of advanced batteries, wind turbine construction and development, solar panel development and construction. We should be making that stuff in Massachusetts. Somebody with a 15-week or 12-week training program could end up with a $70,000, $80,000, $90,000 a year job making, these precision parts. And they don't need to live in the city to do it. They could live in a rural area, they could live in a gateway city, and own a house and have a really great quality of life. We got to get back to that kind of an approach to the economy.
So we've just got a few minutes left, but we do have a few.
I talked a lot.
We talked about transportation, we talked about jobs and economic development. Give us a quick couple other things on your mind without getting into too many details, but just let us know what you're thinking about.
Well, I'm thinking a lot about, equity and criminal justice reform. We know we've done several packages, Tommy, in the legislature. We need to implement them now. That's really important. An important piece of this actually is our governor's council. You saw the news from Governor Baker about 2 commutations. I give Governor Baker credit for those 2 commutations. It turns out, and the reporting has kind of shown that the governor's council actually played a pretty important role in bringing those to his desk and pushing for those decisions. If I'm elected lieutenant governor, I would chair the governor's council. I am a lawyer. I'm barred in the state of Massachusetts and in the federal district of Mass, and worked very closely with multiple colleagues on the passage of our police reform legislation in 2020, and then before that in 2018, a really comprehensive, criminal justice reform package that helped reduce a lot of the most unjust mandatory minimum sentences, just as an example. So we've got to really orient our judiciary, I think, towards these reform measures to make sure that the judges, the people in the robes, are approaching these issues with that same mindset. And we need a more diverse judiciary. And so the Governor's Council, which is this kind of obscure body that the lieutenant governor chairs, oversees judicial nominations. And one of the things I would really prioritize is diversity on our bench and getting some reformers on there. Just as an example, Governor Baker has, for the most part, appointed prosecutors to those judgeships. I think it's important to have a diverse set of experiences. Certainly you want some prosecutors, but also public defenders, civil rights lawyers, people with broader experience.
Guy like you, I bet you got a website.
I do have a website. People can learn more at ericlesser.com. If people are interested in helping, signing up, again, Eric, E-R-I-C, Lesser, L-E-S-S-E-R.com. Again, check out ericlesser.com. You can sign up for updates. make a contribution, join our mailing list, shoot me an email. Would love to hear from people.
And of course, and we'll mention it over and over again, the Democratic caucuses are coming. The Democratic convention comes in June, and those are really important items if you want to have a bigger role in deciding which candidate for a number of these statewide offices are going to be the candidate representing the Democrats come the November ballot. But lots of time between now and then, time to get to know the candidates, including folks like my colleague and friend, Senator Eric Lesser. Eric, thanks for coming on Brookline Interactive Group. We're so happy to have you and look forward to getting to know you even more in the weeks and months to come.
Thanks, Tommy. See you.